Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
At Amazon, we're pretty good at getting things done. We're pretty good at solving problems. COVID-19 is the biggest challenge we've had to face. The challenges are what motivate us. Like flying masks to our employees around the world. We're doing everything we can to get you what you need, and doing everything we can to keep our people safe. I'm former Navy pilot Sarah Rhodes, and I'm proud to lead our Amazon Air network.
What is happening today, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to 12-Ounce Sports. I am your host, Glenn Kaplan, on Glenn's Dynamic Sports Corner. I hope you all enjoyed your wonderful football weekend. And Week 17 is going to be a dandy. But before we can talk about the Week 17 schedule, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I have to recap what happened in Week 16. And, for the record, I am so excited to get going here on this Monday morning. So let's start on 12-Ounce Sports today with this. The question I have for all of you is simply this when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did the Indianapolis Colts choke, or did the Pittsburgh Steelers earn it? The truth of the latter is, and I know y'all don't want to hear it, and I know the 412 don't want to hear this answer, the Pittsburgh area code that is, but let me just say it flat out, that the Indianapolis Colts choked that game away rather than the Pittsburgh Steelers winning it. Number one, why did the Colts go away from what was working? Jonathan Taylor was the best player on the field for both teams in the first half. And why does Frank Reich go to Nyheim Hines or Jordan Wilkins or put the game into Phillip Rivers' hands when you know your identity is you run the football, you have the Steelers reeling it on the ropes after going up 24-7? Yeah, I know what you want to say after that touchdown by Deontay Johnson changed the game. But you still had a 10-point lead. Why don't you run the ball with Jonathan Taylor? And the supposed defense, spectacular defense that the Colts has, led by DeForest Buckner, is supposed to stop. It's supposed to let this offense keep reeling. But no, let's get the Pittsburgh Steelers back on track because we feel bad for them. And which is why the Colts need this game. They'd be leading the AFC South because of the Tennessee Titans loss. Now they need help in Week 17. And I know you're all Steelers fans probably want to get on me this morning. Glenn, give them some credit. Glenn, give them this. If you watched that game, that was a choke by the Colts. A 17-point lead in the second half. You're dominating the game up front on both lines of the scrimmage. And you just simply get away from that game plan. That's called choking. And no, I'm not kind to the Indianapolis Colts this morning. And no, I'm not kind to the Pittsburgh Steelers either. And no, I'm not going to give any credit for a team that gets away from their identity just because they feel bad for them. Phillip Rivers has time and when the pressure mounts the most for Phillip Rivers. I was thinking when he threw this interception yesterday. Typical when it gets in the big games, big spots, and when pressure tights and mounts. This is what the definition of him has been for his entire career. I'm not trying to be emotional about this. I just see what I watch the games and what I've seen in the past. And no, I'm not going to sit here this morning either and say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are back. And I'm not going to do that either. I'll probably put them back in the top 10. I'll probably put the Colts out of the top 10. But no means am I going to sit here this morning and praise either of these football teams. You want some cookies and some milk to go along with it? Is that what you guys want? So, yeah, it was a 28-24 win. And Juju Smith-Schuster scores the game-winning 25-yard touchdown. Oh, so now you want to do the TikTok dances after you're winning. So let me get this straight. When you're mounting high, you want to do the TikTok because you won the AFC North. But when you get smashed in the mouth by a lowly Cincinnati Bengals team, you want guys, oh, now we can stop. Oh, just because we won, we get to do it again. Which is why I could not stand what the Steelers fan base on Twitter was getting under my skin yesterday. It was utterly ridiculous. Oh, so now you come out of hiding when your team wins. What a surprise. Oy vey. But the truth be told, Pittsburgh's in the playoffs. Indianapolis needs help. So now let me get into my game segment here with the Steelers winning 28-24. So this was the first time in a few years the Steelers win the AFC North title. Ben Roethlisberger completed 34-49 passes for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns. James Conner rushed for 20-21 yards on 5 carries and a touchdown. He also caught 5 passes for 45 yards receiving. They still have no running game. Juju Smith-Schuster 9 for 96 yards receiving a touchdown. Deontay Johnson caught 8 passes for 75 yards receiving a touchdown. He also rushed for 2 yards. Chase Claypool 4 for 54 receiving. I don't understand why Pittsburgh doesn't target him more. He might be the best receiver on the roster. Eric Ebron caught 5 passes for 47 yards receiving a touchdown. One of the better games this season from him at tight end. James Washington 2 for 20 receiving. He also needs some more targets. Phillip Rivers 22 of 35 passes for 270 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Jonathan Taylor rushed for 74 yards on 18 carries and 2 touchdowns. Nyheim Hines rushed for 8 carries on 44 yards rushing, caught 5 for 21 yards receiving. Zach Pascal 3 for 64 yards receiving and a touchdown. T.Y. Hilton 3 for 60 receiving. Jack Doyle 4 for 50. Michael Pittman Jr. 3 for 38. Mo Alley-Cox 1 for 20. Trey Burton 3 for 20. So now let me get into my next segment here. Staying in the AFC South, let's go to the Tennessee Titans and the Green Bay Packers. And I know I got a text from a Tennessee Titans fan last night. And you know I was going to talk about this game no matter what. Sorry, it was just on my agenda. I have to. You can't. Just because you tell me one thing doesn't mean I have to listen to you from time to time. But I'm not going to get into the aspect of Aaron Rodgers being the MVP or the Tennessee Titans defense stinks basically from the S to the K. I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to get into is this. Have the Green Bay Packers found another weapon heading into the month of January? That's what I'm going to talk about here. A.J. Dillon. Everyone was so skeptical of the Green Bay Packers. You know, the old criticism of drafting Jordan Love in the first round. And you draft A.J. Dillon in the second round. Both have done nothing yet this year. So welcome to the snow game yesterday, where A.J. Dillon for the Green Bay Packers, because Aaron Jones was banged up a little bit and Jamal Williams was out. So A.J. Dillon rushed for 124 yards for the Green Bay Packers and 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. That's the story of the game. We knew Aaron Rodgers was going to torch this Tennessee Titans defense. That's not the story. The story isn't the refs being horrible. That's always a given too. or Derrick Henry being shut down. That happens. Everyone's human. Or that the Tennessee Titans didn't have their A game. It happens. The story here is A.J. Dillon potentially being another lethal weapon for the Green Bay Packers come January. That's what the story's about. It's not about the domination by Green Bay in the snow, and it's not about Tennessee being dominated. This game is about the Packers have found another dangerous weapon in the January. And you already run the football. And now they're starting to show that they're physical up front. And if they can run the football like that, Aaron Rodgers is going to kiss that second ring come February. And no, I will not do the X-Sharpie on this show anymore because it appears I'm about to jinx two teams right out of the playoffs from that, and I'm not doing that anymore on this show. So I'm not going to do that to the Green Bay Packers or any other team anymore. But back to my A.J. Dillon segment. A.J. Dillon. This is what they expected when they drafted him in the second round. Oh, so this is the help they were going to get Aaron Rodgers. Not the wide receiver help. Oh, let's take pressure off him so he could gain yards while running the football. That's the pressure that the Packers mean when they said we need to take pressure off Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, and I know the Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams connection is on cue and on point. And yeah, I know they don't really have any other receivers. You got Allen Lazard, Robert Tonyan, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, and I completely choked in my fantasy matchup, and I'm not really in the mood to talk about it on Yahoo. But A.J. Dillon is going to be a head case for the rest of the NFC. But there is one other head case that the Green Bay Packers still have to worry about before getting the number one seed. And I'm telling you something right now. The Green Bay Packers are on upset alert this week on the road against the Chicago Bears. And if the Chicago Bears make the playoffs, that is the last team in the NFC you want to play. And there is every right in Green Bay's mind, knock them out now before you let the big dogs in the fight and in the playoffs. Do not let the Chicago Bears in the playoffs. That's what the Packers are thinking. And they still got to play the 1 seed. There's no thinking about this morning if we got to sit guys or not because we didn't clinch the number 1 seed yet. There's no thinking twice about it. So that was a 40-14 world domination win by the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, 21-25 passes for 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also rushed for 19 yards on 3 carries. A.J. Dillon, as I said, 124 yards rushing on 21 carries and 2 touchdowns. Also caught 1 pass for 5 yards receiving. Aaron Jones, 94 yards rushing on 10 carries. He also caught 2 passes for 14 yards receiving. Davante Adams, 11 catches for 142 yards and 3 touchdowns. Equanimous St. Brown, a 21-yard touchdown reception in this football game. Robert Tonyan, 1 for 17. Allen Lazard, 2 for 14. Dominique Daphne, 1 for 13. Tavon Austin, 2 for 5. So Ryan Tannehill, 11 of 24, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. 3 of 55, and a touchdown that was rushing. That was that design read option. I thought that was a great play call. Because everyone, Derrick Henry, oops, the camera guy. That was 19. Because Tennessee was down 19. Nothing they made in 1914. And then, the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Derrick Henry, 98 yards rushing on 23 carries. A.J. Brown, 4 for 43. Jonnu Smith, 3 for 30 and a touchdown. Jeremy McNick goes 1 for 6. Oh, and Corey Davis did not have a catch. Yeah, that cost me my fantasy matchup. I ain't getting into it. And I'm not blaming anyone, obviously, for it. But I'm moving on to my next segment. So, want to talk about dangerous? The Baltimore Ravens took down the New York Giants by a final score of 27-13. The Baltimore Ravens are very dangerous as long as they can beat the Cincinnati Bengals next week. But here's the thing. Remember a couple years ago when Cincinnati beat Baltimore the final week of the season? Remember that? I guarantee you that Ravens fans are going to be thinking about that all week. Sorry, Baltimore. Sorry, Maryland. But I had to put that into your brains and put some doubt into you this morning. Yeah, I know you beat the Giants easily, but it's all about divisional matchups in Week 17 and what happens. Because I'm telling you, you lose to the Bengals and it knocks you out of the playoffs. Wowee! That will be something for the Cleveland Browns. Not the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, excuse me. So Lamar Jackson completed 17 of 26 passes for 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also rushed for 80 yards and 13 carries. As I've said, I truly believe that Jackson is playing the best football of his career, and I think he's been playing better this year than at some points during his MVP season last year. And I told you, I think him sitting out a game with the coronavirus, I personally think helped him. Sometimes just a game, just to refresh, rethink how you do things. And I think it's helped him. Gus Edwards has rushed for 85 yards on 15 carries. He also caught 2 passes for 37 yards receiving. J.K. Dobbins had 11 carries for 77 yards rushing a touchdown. And I'm telling you, this Ravens rushing attack, it's very strong. They just basically beat the fronts off the New York Giants up front. That's how you win football games in the NFL. Mark Andrews, 7 for 76 yards receiving. Marquise Brown for 4 for 25 receiving a touchdown. Willie Snead IV, 2 for 24 receiving. Miles Boykin, 1 for 13. Dez Bryant also had an 8-yard touchdown reception in this game in the second half for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm happy for Dez Bryant because simply he's been out of the NFL for a few years and now he's having success. Maybe he could be like Anquan Bolden, who knows. And now the biggest story for the New York Giants. Let's see. Daniel Jones completed 24 41 passes for 252 yards and 1 touchdown. He also rushed for 3 yards and 1 carry. So now that somehow the New York Giants are alive for the NFC East. At least, whatever you want to say. There are a bunch of scenarios. I'll probably go over those on Thursday. But the New York Giants are somehow this morning 5-10. And you're still 1 game out. And you need help to win the NFC East. But let's truth be told. Even if they win Sunday, they're probably not winning the division. So let me just say this. Is Daniel Jones the answer for the New York Giants? Well, we got to see. Head coach Joe Judge, there's probably going to be a new general manager, not a new head coach. That's probably going to be the first thing they talk about. I mean, they don't have any receivers or tight ends, but a lot of people do not like offensive coordinator Jason Garrett. I'm trying to figure that out, but I understand why they don't like him. I mean, I understand why they don't like him, but I'm not going to sit here and and I'm not going to be on the fire Jason Garrett bandwagon when Daniel Jones has basically been horrible this year. I'm not going to be that guy. So then, Alfred Morris, 4 yards rushing on 3 carries. He's got 1 pass for 9 yards receiving. Sterling Shepard caught 9 passes for 77 yards receiving a touchdown. Evan Ingram caught 7 for 65 yards receiving. Dante Pettis, 2 for 33. Darius Slayton, 2 for 26. All right. The Carolina Panthers and the Washington football team. The Carolina Panthers took down the Washington football team by a final score of 20-13. I knew the Carolina Panthers were going to win. The second they said Alex Smith was out, yeah, we knew it was game over, game, set, match. Teddy Bridgewater completed 19-28 passes for 197 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception. He also rushed for 7 yards on 6 carries. Curtis Samuel rushed for 52 yards and 7 carries. He also caught 5 passes for 106 yards receiving. Mike Davis rushed for 28 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown. Rodney Smith had 7 carries for 23 yards rushing. He also caught 2 for 15. Robbie Anderson, 7 for 39 and a touchdown. DJ Moore, 5 for 37. And I'm just going to say this, because it's already been on Twitter this morning. The Washington football team better hope Alex Smith is back. They're hopeful that he's back Sunday. But if he's not back, Taylor Heineke will be the starting quarterback for Washington on Sunday night. And Dwayne Haskins is demoted back to the bench. He was stripped of his captaincy, which is not a surprise. Chase Young is now a new captain for Washington, and deservedly so. So, that defense played well. And here are the stat lines. Dwayne Haskins completed 14 of 28 passes, 154 yards and 2 interceptions. That was probably his last game in the NFL. I don't think he's ever playing in the NFL again. Taylor Heineke completed 12 of 19 passes for 137, 138 yards and 1 touchdown. He also rushed for 3 carries. He had 3 carries for 22 yards rushing. Antonio Gibson rushed for 61 yards and carries. He also caught 3 passes for 8 yards receiving. J.D. McKissick rushed for 15 yards and 4 carries. He also caught 8 passes for 77 yards receiving and a touchdown. Logan Thomas, 7 for 63. Cam Sims, 3 for 63. Logan Thomas is probably a better quarterback than Dwayne Haskins is, but Sims probably not. So Steven Sims caught 4 for 52. Robert Foster caught 1 for 29 yards receiving. And Brandon Zylstra recovered a fumble recovery for a touchdown for the Carolina Panthers over the Washington football team in the first quarter. And we will see what happens heading to Week 17 as well here with both of these squads. So, Philadelphia Eagles versus the Dallas Cowboys game recap. So it's 37-17 Dallas Cowboys over the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Philadelphia Eagles are now eliminated from playoff contention. So, the Dallas Cowboys are somehow alive in the NFC East. I don't know how, but they simply are. They got a ton of offensive talent, and Andy Dalton torched the Philadelphia Eagles defense, 22 of 30, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also rushed for 15 yards on 5 carries. Zeke Elliott came back, did not fumble, had 105 yards rushing on 19 carries. He also caught 4 passes for 34 yards receiving. Hey, maybe this is what Elliott need, a game on the bench, which is not a surprise. And Elliott, the Harpy Arnsel of the Dallas Cowboys backfield, and maybe watching Tony Pollard helped them along the way. CeeDee Lamb had a 19-yard touchdown reception in the game. He also caught he had a 19-yard rushing touchdown in the game. He also caught 3 passes for 65 yards receiving a touchdown. Tony Pollard had 12 yards rushing on 9 carries. Amari Cooper, 4 for 121 and a touchdown. No, he just had 4 for 121. Michael Gallup, 6 for 121 and 2 touchdowns. Dalton Schultz, 3 for 21. Blake Bell, 1 for 7. Now where do I begin with the Philadelphia Eagles? Ladies and gentlemen, the Philadelphia Eagles are eliminated. So right now, if the season ended today, they would have the number 5 pick in the NFL draft. What does that mean? I would draft a wide receiver or some defensive help. I think you have your franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts. And they're going to trade Carson Wentz. It's not Jalen Hurts' fault they lost these last 2 games. It's the defense's fault. It's not Jalen Hurts' fault. Hurts is a good quarterback, and I was wrong about Jalen Hurts. The only reason why the Eagles are still in contention Week 16 because of Jalen Hurts, not because of Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, they would have been eliminated 3 weeks ago had they kept with Carson Wentz. They would have never been in the New Orleans Saints. Jalen Hurts was the reason why they gave this team hope. But then we realized, okay, it was the defense. So then we realized with Jalen Hurts, it's the defense. There's some holes on defense. If we could fix a thing or two on defense, we're pretty set for next year because we have talent. There's talent. We have the offensive line's better than we think it is. And I'll tell you why the offensive line's better than we think it is. The offensive line's better simply for one reason only. Because Jalen Hurts is not holding on to the football for too long. It's not an accident that the offensive line looks better with Jalen Hurts than Carson Wentz. The offensive line didn't give up 50 sacks to Carson Wentz. It was Carson Wentz who probably held on to the ball too long, and 25 to 30 or whatever amount of those sacks were his fault. So I think the Eagles are in good hands at quarterback, and on offense, you just got to plug some things in on defense, and then I think they'll be back on the contention next year in the NFC East. And Doug Peterson, you're not going to get rid of Doug Peterson. I'd be shocked to get rid of General Manager Harry Roseman. I would not get rid of either of those, and I would not get rid of Jalen Hurts. You trade Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts, and I think because that relationship with Wentz and Hurts will be toxic. And here's another thing. We're talking about bench quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky, Ryan Tannehill, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz. Here's the thing. Tannehill, Trubisky, Mariota, when they were benched, at one point in time, never complained. And all 3 of them were better. Remains to be seen if Wentz will be better after he gets benched, or if he's officially no goods. Because Because Wentz is not a team player. Tannehill was when he sat behind Marcus Mariota last year, and then he came in. Marcus Mariota didn't complain when he got benched to Ryan Tannehill or be the backup behind Derek Carr, but he shined the game he played for the Raiders against the Chargers. There's a reason why those Tennessee Titans teammates rooted for him. Every single one of those Tennessee Titans teammates rooted for him. Now let's get to Mitchell Trubisky. Why does everyone love Mitchell Trubisky? First guy in the locker room, last guy out of the locker room. Doesn't have the talent like Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, but everyone loves Mitchell Trubisky. Works hard, and he's played well. Ever since he got benched, his best football of his career. And he has the Chicago Bears on the verge of making a playoff second time in 3 years. So Trubisky, Tannehill, Mariota don't pout and shout. Wentz does. He's not Wentz is me, look at me, look at me. That's not Tannehill, Mariota, or Trubisky. That's none of those three guys. They would never dare do such a thing because they do a bunch of things with grace and class unlike Carson Wentz. That's what it comes down to. And this is why Jalen Hurts is a leader and deserves the captaincy next year when they trade Carson Wentz in the offseason. If you ask me, I think Jalen Hurts has won the Eagles locker room. Because I guarantee you, there are not going to be a lot of Eagles players that really want Wentz like Wentz. Or really want him to succeed elsewhere. And it remains to be seen moving forward. So Jalen Hurts completed 21 of 39 passes for 342 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He also rushed for 69 yards on 9 carries. Miles Sanders, 57 yards rushing on 15 carries and a touchdown. Boston Scott, 17 yards rushing on 7 carries. Jordan Howard, 3 for 8 rushing. Deshaun Jackson had an 81-yard touchdown reception in the first quarter. He did one of those somersaults in the end zone, and a lot of people really do not like Deshaun Jackson. Quez Watkins, 2 for 57. Dallas Goedert, 3 for 38. Zach Ertz, 3 for 33. Jalen Reagor, 3 for 30. Greg Ward Jr., 2 for 27. Miles Sanders, he also had 4 for 27 receiving. Travis Fulgham, 2 for 27. Man, he fell off the face of the earth after having a good year. He was doing good until he fell flat. And then Alshon Jeffrey, 1 for 22. Use promo code 12ouncesports, all caps, for deposit bonus up to $1,000 from my bookie. This is the first of 3 I will say. We are live on 12 Ounce Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final week of 2020. And I could not be more thrilled and excited for 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have some interesting things on Thursday about potentially maybe looking forward to 2021 and going back over the moments of 2020. But I would also, at this time, like to thank Beck and Cody Jansen for putting the amount of hard work they put in and week out to make all of these shows wonderful. We are growing on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Please give us a follow on all 3 of those pages. So now let's get back into the next segment of the Los Angeles Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks. So, the Seattle Seahawks took down the Los Angeles Rams by a final score of 20-9. So, Seattle wins the NFC West over Los Angeles in Week 16 as well here. And if you did not listen to my show a couple weeks ago, I said the Rams would be Sharpie the next. Now that's not the case. They're on the verge of missing the playoffs. And also, Jared Goff is dealing with a broken thumb, which is not very good. I can't believe that the Rams are really, the Jets' loss is really about the turmoil of them. And John Warford will be the starting quarterback for the Rams if Goff cannot play this Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. Here's what I find interesting. Now, I was having a conversation if Goff is getting to Wentz territory, but the stats don't say so. But here's what's interesting. Jared Goff does have a turnover in his last 23 games. So that tells me he's a little bit insecure with the football, whether he throws picks or fumbles. But I am going to say this about Goff. He has won them games this year, so we can't say he has been in Carson Wentz territory. However, two things. Number one, let's see how John Wolford plays if Jared Goff can't play, if he's anything decent. Number two, if Wolford is flat out awful, the Rams need to bring up a backup this offseason, not to take over Goff's job, but to challenge and push him to be better. Do you get the difference what I'm trying to say? Bring in a veteran to push him, not to take his job permanently. And this is also in case Goff gets hurt too. And no, I'm not saying bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, because Fitzpatrick will probably take over his job. I'm talking like Marcus Mariota. Like if he would only come in if he got hurt. Just like what he did with the Raiders and Derek Carr. An example like that. No, don't bring in Carson Wentz. Obviously not that. Or don't bring in Nick Foles or Mike Glennon. Those would all be terrible options. Maybe bring in Cam Newton. And you might think I sound crazy. Think about it this way. Cam Newton, that might be the only way he stays in the league, because I don't think he's going to be back with the Patriots next season. And that might be his only way in staying in the league, is if they bring in a guy like Cam Newton. Jameis Winston would be a threat to maybe take over Jared Goff. That's the guy they don't want. Cam Newton would be perfect. Newton wouldn't be a threat to take his job, but it'd be a threat to push him. There's a difference between the two. There's a monster difference between the two of them. So the Seattle Seahawks win the division for the 5th time in 11 years under Pete Carroll, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, which is obviously is a little surprised this year. I thought they were going to be a wildcard team, but remember, they're not anything special without Russell Wilson. They have a running game. Their defense is getting better. Jamal Adams, who was acquired from the New York Jets in the offseason, was very, very happy that he was no longer in New York and finally gets to play with Seattle. And he smoked a cigar after the win, and he did it at the post-game press conference at the podium, which I found very interesting. But you want to bring a cigar to the post-game press conference? That may be like bringing alcohol on the show. I just don't think that's ethical per se. You get what I'm saying? I don't know if that's the right thing, bringing a cigar. But the thing is, yeah, if you win the Super Bowl, okay, it's the only time you're probably going to do in your life. You're probably the only chance, okay, whatever, you'll have fun with it. That's all I got to say on that. So, Russell Wilson completed 20 of 32 passes for 225 yards and 1 touchdown. He also rushed for 9 yards on 3 carries and a touchdown. DK Metcalf caught 6 passes for 59 yards receiving. Jacob Hollister caught 2 passes for 17 yards receiving a touchdown. Tyler Lockett caught 3 passes for 44 yards receiving. David Moore caught 1 pass for 45 yards receiving. Jared Goff completed 24 of 43 passes for 234 yards and 1 interception. He also rushed for 23 yards on 7 carries. Darrell Henderson Jr. rushed for 62 yards on 12 carries. Malcolm Brown rushed for 27 yards on 7 carries. Cooper Kupp caught 8 passes for 66 yards receiving. Josh Reynolds caught 6 passes for 65 yards receiving. Robert Woods caught 4 passes for 48 yards receiving. Tyler Higbee caught 4 passes for 48 yards receiving. And then Gerald Everett 2 for 13. Malcolm Brown 1 for 8 yards receiving. All right. On to the next one. Next game recap here in the NFL. Yes. The Miami Dolphins and the Vegas Raiders. So, the Dolphins, thanks to the Ryan Fitzpatrick heroics, in the 4th quarter and the Vegas Raiders collapsing. The Dolphins at the moment are the number 5 seed in the AFC. And the Raiders are officially eliminated. If John Gruden was not the head coach of the Raiders, he'd be fired. I mean, the Raiders, I feel sorry for Raiders fans this morning that you're stuck with John Gruden for another 7 years. I mean, John Gruden's just not a good head coach. Can I just say that? Gruden's just not good. Remember the game where they almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Like, oh, the Raiders are for real. And then the Raiders should have lost to the Jets and amongst other things. Raiders are not good. Let me say this. If the Raiders are bad next year, I would pull the plug on John Gruden. He's awful. He hasn't adapted to the game. Mike Mayock is a good general manager. Problem's not Mike Mayock. The problem is John Gruden's not a good head coach. John Gruden needs to go back to the booth. He needs to go back to the booth. I don't know why I struggled to say booth when I tried it 3 times. John Gruden is a broadcaster. He's not a head coach in the NFL. He's great I'll tell you one thing. He's good at looking at film, but he's not good as a coach. He just doesn't seem to elevate his guys in the second half of the season. Want to know what they do? They choke. They choke at the end of seasons. I think the Raiders do have some better talent than I thought. If I was Mayock, or the owner, I think the Raiders should get rid of John Gruden. There's no problem with some of the talent they have. John Gruden's just not a very good head coach. He just happens to be lucky in the same division as Anthony Lynn and Vic Fangio. That's why he's going to keep his job. Andy Reid's by far the best head coach in that division by a mile. And it's not even close. You see that? Andy Reid is the best coach in that division by a mile. And the Miami Dolphins, so Tua Tagovailoa was absolutely, unequivocally atrocious for the Miami Dolphins. So then they bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who saves the day. And remember when they were down 25-23, Ryan Fitzpatrick throws to Matt Collins. Ryan Fitzpatrick helmet gets grabbed. And there is a penalty, and the Raiders are the typical Raiders, which is not a surprise whatsoever, because the Miami Dolphins could be a dangerous team in the playoffs, and it remains to be seen, and it would not be a surprise if the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game or two with that defense, but they really didn't force any turnovers in that game. And Jason Sanders kicked the game-winning 44-yard field goal with less than 10 seconds remaining in the football game. And I am telling you this right now, ladies and gentlemen. The Vegas Raiders, when they get fans, will be fun. But John Gruden better be on the hot seat next season. If he's not on the hot seat next season, it's going to be big-time trouble for the Vegas Raiders. So now, the Miami Dolphins. Let's see. Ryan Fitzpatrick replaced Tua Tagovailoa in the game, and his very good relationship between them two. Fitzpatrick, as I've said about the Fitzpatrick facebacks, and then Fitzpatrick, 9 to 13, 182 yards, 1 touchdown. Tua, 17 to 22, 94 yards, rushed for 11 yards and 3 carries. Myles Gaskin, 87 yards on 14 carries, 5 for 82, receiving 2 touchdowns. Clayton Delham rushed for 22 yards on a fake punt. Mike Gesicki, 4 for 54 yards receiving. Jakeem Grant, 5 for 43 yards receiving. Matt Collins, 2 for 42. Isaiah Ford, 4 for 37. Derek Carr, 21 to 34, 336 yards, 1 touchdown. He came back after missing most of a game with a groin injury against the Los Angeles Chargers last week. Josh Jacobs, 69 yards rushing on 13 carries. Jalen Richard rushed for 19 yards on 2 carries. Devontae Booker, 11 yards rushing on 6 carries. He also caught 2 for 8 yards receiving. Nelson Aguilar, 5 for 155 and a touchdown. Darren Waller, 5 for 112. Hunter Renfrow, 5 for 34. Jason Witten, 2 for 12. So that's where we're at with the Dolphins and the Raiders. Next up, Minnesota Vikings and the New Orleans Saints. But before I get into that, use promo code 12ounce sports, all caps, for deposit bonus up to $1,000 for my bookie. Okay, so this was the Christmas Day special, and on the Christmas Day special, the New Orleans Saints took down the Minnesota Vikings by a final score of 52-33. New Orleans wins the NFC South title once again, and Minnesota is eliminated from playoff contention. The Saints actually knocked out the Vikings from the playoffs for once, and after being eliminated by them the last 2 out of 3 postseasons, Drew Brees completed 19 of 26 passes for 311 yards and 2 touchdowns. Taysom Hill completed 2 passes for 8 yards. He also rushed for 18 yards on 5 carries and a touchdown. Hill also caught 1 pass for 19 yards receiving. Alvin Kamara rushed for 155 yards on 22 carries and 6 touchdowns. For whoever had him in fantasy this weekend, you were happy, and whoever faced him, I feel sorry. As they say, the old phrase, sorry not sorry, right? So, Latavius Murray and Kamara also had 3 for 17 yards receiving. Latavius Murray rushed for 72 yards on 14 carries. He also caught 3 passes for 24 yards receiving. Emmanuel Sanders caught 4 passes for 83 yards receiving. Jared Cook caught 3 passes for 42 yards receiving. Adam Trotman caught 2 for 45. Marquez Callaway 3 for 26. Kirk Cousins completed 27 of 41 passes for 293 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook rushed for 73 yards on 15 carries and a touchdown. He also caught 2 passes for 12 yards receiving. Adam Thielen caught 8 passes for 97 yards receiving and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson is probably going to potentially win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. Caught 6 passes for 85 yards receiving. Irv Smith Jr. caught 6 passes for 53 yards receiving 2 touchdowns. And because of the emergence of Irv Smith Jr., this is probably going to lead to Kyle Rudolph, being traded at the end of the season when the offseason arrives. So, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions. Tampa Bay Buccaneers demolished the Detroit Lions by a final score of 47-7. Tom Brady's day was done by the beginning of the third quarter. Tom Brady completed 22-27 passes, 348, 349 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Blaine Gabbert completed 9 of 15 passes for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also rushed for 15 yards on 2 carries. Keyshawn Vaughn, 62 yards rushing on 50 carries, 1 for 7 receiving. Leonard Fournette, 9 for 34 rushing and a touchdown, 3 for 32 receiving. Mike Evans, 10 for 181 and 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans, the RPR of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver group. And I'm going to tell you this. Mike Evans is one of the best wide receivers in the league. And I'm telling you, this offense could be dangerous in the playoffs depending who they draw in the first round. Yeah, I know they're going to get an NFC East opponent. Yeah, they're probably going to have no more than 6 or 7 wins. But that will be interesting. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are one of the most polarizing NFL teams. I'm not going to say they're dominant, but they're polarizing because of what they have. Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, Mike Evans, and the list goes on and on. Right? So I guess that's what it is. Chris Godwin, 5 for 84 and a touchdown. Gronkowski, 2 for 58 and 2 touchdowns. Antonio Brown had 4 passes for 35 yards receiving and a touchdown. Cameron Brate, 2 for 27. And the Detroit Lions went through 3 quarterbacks in this game. They first went through, it was Chase Daniel, David Blough, and Matthew Stafford. Daniel, 13 of 18 for 86 yards. David Blough, 6 of 10 for 49 yards. He rushed for 18 yards, 1 carry. Matthew Stafford, 2 of 3 passes for 17 yards. He got hurt in this game, did not return. DeAndre Swift rushed for 45 yards and 10 carries. He also caught 4 passes for 25 yards receiving. Adrian Peterson had 4 carries on 10 yards rushing. Amendola, 5 for 37. TJ Hawkinson, 4 for 23. Mohamed Sanu Jr., 2 for 22. Marvin Jones Jr., 3 for 19. Kieran Johnson, 2 for 17. Quintez Cephas, 1 for 9 receiving. So the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. This will be the last NFL game recap that I do here today. So the San Francisco 49ers took down the Arizona Cardinals. Final score, 20-12. So this was for the San Francisco proving, and it proves that they are still a quality NFL team and that they were banged up all season long. Arizona's playoff chances are spoiled there on the outside looking in heading into Week 17. San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh is ready to become an NFL head coach for another franchise. I'm telling you, a lot of people inside that San Francisco organization loves him. The San Francisco 49ers are going to be losing the quality head coach Robert Saleh. I hope they have another quality defensive coach inside that organization to replace him as defense coordinator next year. Look, you lose Nick Bosa to an ACL injury. You traded DeForest Buckner. Richard Sherman was hurt. I mean, Sherman was absolutely admired by what Robert Saleh has done all year. And this tells you maybe Arizona's not ready. And if Arizona misses the playoffs, Cliff Kingsbury, hot seat next year, maybe he's not the guy. And I hear it a lot from people I talk to that maybe Cliff Kingsbury is not the right man for Arizona because you can't win at Texas Tech. What makes you possibly think that you're going to win at the NFL level? That's what people say about Cliff Kingsbury, and I hear it week in and week out from people. Cliff Kingsbury's not an NFL caliber head coach. He cannot do it. What makes you think he's going to do it at Texas Tech? We've seen signs of promises. This team is better than its record. If they had what if they had Joe Judge in New York Giants? He may be better, but who knows? And the San Francisco 49ers with Robert Saleh does a lot of things with grace and class. And that's just the way he is personality-wise. And Kingsbury has to figure it out in the final week. If you lose to a Rams team without Jared Goff, you deserve to be on the hot seat going into next year. You simply do. There's no excuses for it. So C.J. Beathard, without Nick Mullins and Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh Rosen was the backup for San Francisco. And C.J. Beathard completed 13 of 22 passes for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 18 yards and 3 carries. Jeff Wilson Jr. rushed for 183 yards and 22 carries. He also caught a 21-yard touchdown reception in his football game as well here in the first quarter. George Kittle caught 4 passes for 92 yards receiving. Oh, another 49ers player that was out for most of the year. Jerick McKinnon, 3 for 29 yards receiving. He also rushed for 4 yards and 1 carry. Kendrick Bourne, 1 for 16. Brandon Ayuk, 1 for 15. Kyler Murray, 31 of 50 passes for 247 yards and 1 interception. He also rushed for 75 yards on 8 carries. Kenyon Drake rushed for 45 yards on 18 carries and a touchdown. He also got 2 passes for 5 yards receiving. Christian Kirk, 7 for 76. Keyshawn Johnson, 2 for 50. Larry Fitzgerald, 6 for 28. DeAndre Hopkins, 8 for 48. Dan Arnold, 3 for 25. Chase Edmonds, 2 for 8 receiving. Darrell Daniels, 1 for 7 receiving. What? So, with my NFL segments going on here, done with those game recaps for now. So now let me move on to another NBA segment. So there are 5 Christmas Day games. So it's the New Orleans Pelicans, Miami Heat, Golden State Warriors, Milwaukee Bucks, Brooklyn Nets, Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks, Los Angeles Lakers, Los Angeles Clippers, and the Denver Nuggets. So those all were the football game. Not football games, basketball games. So, not surprised that the Bucks blew out the Warriors. I was a little surprised the Nets blew out the Celtics. A little bit of a surprise the Lakers blew out the Mavericks, but not really. But I was a little surprised that the Clippers beat the Nuggets on the road. But I was also a little surprised that the Miami Heat also beat the New Orleans Pelicans 101-88. I was surprised about that because I thought it was going to be a little bit closer, a little bit bigger lead because by the way it was playing. Duncan Robinson, 23 points, shot 57.1% from the field. Also got 5 rebounds. Goran Dragic, 18 points. He shot 54.5% from the field. Dragic also grabbed 2 rebounds. Recorded 9 assists. Recorded 4 steals. Bam Adebayo scored 17 points. He also shot 55.6% shooting from the field. Adebayo also grabbed 4 rebounds. Recorded 2 assists. Blocked 1 shot. And recorded 2 steals. As for the New Orleans Pelicans, Zion Williamson coming along in his second year. Scored 32 points. He shot 55% from the field. Williamson grabbed 14 rebounds. Recorded 1 assist. Recorded 1 steal. Brandon Ingram scored 28 points. He shot 41.2% from the field. Ingram also grabbed 2 rebounds, recorded 3 assists. Now, he's another player that might be an all-star this year in the Western Conference. Oh, there's no all-star game, but maybe they may do something for all-stars. I know it's just it's just the first week in, but it's a lot of fun for the NBA and a lot of its fans. And Josh Hart scored 12 points. He shot 50% from the field. Hart also grabbed 9 rebounds and recorded 1 steal. So did you all see? So I'll stick on the NBA here quickly before I get into the Week 17 schedule saga. That the Clippers were down by 50 at halftime, 77-27, and they lost by like 50. And Paul George's like, no big deal. Yes, it is. And then Kawhi Leonard. How about Kawhi Leonard? He didn't play. Suffered a jaw injury. Man, I didn't know Kawhi Leonard's worth 50 points. You know what they say? Paul George, Pandemic P. That's what Paul George really is. Paul George is not the $226 million player that they think he was. Paul George is not as good as people think he is. Paul George, I'm telling you, the Clippers are going to regret this contract. I do not understand why the Clippers paid this man all this money. Or was it Kawhi Leonard that convinced the Clippers to sign this man? Well, Ibaka, teammates of Kawhi Leonard, when they were back in Toronto, when they won a championship back in 2019 against the Golden State Warriors in 6 games, and that was Nick Nurse as the head coach. That was probably one of the most interesting NBA finals ever. And also championship runs with Kyle Lowry, and Danny Green, Marc Gasol, Norman Powell, Fred VanVleet. That was a very interesting team. But now let me get into the Week 17 NFL schedule. This will be my last segment for today. So, Week 17 schedule here, the 1 o'clock games. I'm not going to predict them now, but I will go over that on Thursday on the air. So the 1 o'clock games features Atlanta Falcons versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay's basically locked up to number 5. New York Jets versus New England Patriots means nothing to either team. Minnesota Vikings versus Detroit Lions means nothing to either team. Pittsburgh Steelers versus Cleveland Browns. Steelers may rest up some players. That's going to be talked about on Pittsburgh radio all week. I know some Steelers fans are already talking about it. Some Steelers fans, that's going to be a hot topic this week. And wouldn't surprise me if they rest the players, even though the Cleveland Browns, they might have to play them the following week. I think they care more about a guy like Ben Roethlisberger and Juju Smith-Schuster and those guys being healthy than beating the Cleveland Browns to get in the playoffs. They know they could probably beat them with a healthy squad the following week. So I don't think they'd be too worried about that, Mike Tomlin. He's probably going to, if Ben Roethlisberger tells the media we want to rest this week, Mike Tomlin is going to listen to him and be like, yeah, we're going to listen up. We want to rest. We want to rest. We don't want to get hurt here in Week 17 in the potential meaningless game. You understand you may want to play for the 2 seed, but the 2 seed doesn't really mean as much. Yeah, 2 home games is nice, but it's not a first-round bye this year. So if you're the Steelers, you may want to act as Week 17 is your first-round bye, and that's fine by them. Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals. That game means everything to the Ravens. Cincinnati Bengals could be spoilers just like they were a couple years ago. Miami Dolphins, Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's going to try and get the number 2 seed. And the Miami Dolphins are going to try and get in the playoffs. If they lose, they could very well lose. They will need probably Indianapolis or Baltimore or Cleveland to lose to get in. Now here are the 4:25 games on Sunday. Seattle Seahawks versus San Francisco 49ers. Seattle's trying to get the number 1 seed. Arizona Cardinals versus Los Angeles Rams. Both are fighting for potentially the 7th and final playoff spot in the NFC. Jacksonville Jaguars, Indianapolis Colts. Colts are playing for the playoff lives and potentially for the AFC South title. Tennessee Titans versus Houston Texans. Tennessee's playing for the AFC South divisional crown, but Tennessee could already be in the playoffs once kickoff begins. If either Miami, Baltimore, or Cleveland lose. Vegas Raiders versus Denver Broncos means nothing. Los Angeles Chargers versus Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs already have the number 1 seed locked up, means nothing to them. Chargers will be playing for pride. Potentially Anthony Lynn's last game being coached by Los Angeles Chargers, and Justin Herbert wants to play for pride. Green Bay Packers versus Chicago Bears. This is probably the game that means everything. The Chicago Bears are playing to get in the playoffs, and the Green Bay Packers are trying to spoil the Bears' season, and the Packers want the number 1 seed in the NFC and go through Lambeau. And if you're Chicago, you want to be that 7th and final playoff spot in the NFC. Mitchell Trubisky, David Montgomery, that offense is dangerous right now. They have scored 30 points in the last 4 games. That is the first time that has happened since 1965 for Chicago. And then New Orleans Saints versus Carolina Panthers. New Orleans Saints are trying to play for the 1 seed, and the Carolina Panthers are playing for pride, going to try and get a win and have some building blocks in the next year. Finally, last but not least, 8:20, 8:21 p.m. Eastern, Sunday Night Football will feature the Washington football team and the Philadelphia Eagles. And Washington wins, they win the NFC East. If Philadelphia wins, the winner of Dallas and New York will be the NFC East champion, or the least. Whatever you want to say, NFC East, NFC least. It really doesn't matter with the NFC East, NFC least. Ladies and gentlemen, I am out of time here. Thanks for tuning in to Glenn's Dynamic Sports Corner. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week as well, because by the time we are back on air on Thursday, it is going to be New Year's Eve. And ladies and gentlemen, we know this, it will be the final hours of 2020. We can throw a kiss the year goodbye. 2021. We hope it will be with health and happiness and much blessings. That's what we all can hope for in 2021. So on Thursday's show, I'm going to go over the top 10 sports moments in 2020, although it's kind of shaky in the worst year ever. Look forward to 2021. I'm going to have NFL Week 17 preview, bowl predictions, and other hot topics like the playoff scenarios too. And the top 10 NFL teams entering that week. NBA, NHL, and MLB talk as well. Also, did you see that Blake Snell got traded from Tampa Bay Rays to the San Diego Padres for some prospects? Though nonetheless, and I'm saying though nonetheless, we will see what happens. I hope I have a tremendous show for you guys in store on Thursday. And there's a potential new segment that I might be starting on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Though nonetheless, use promo code 12ounce sports, all caps, for deposit bonus up to $1,000 from my bookie.